Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. Even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Georgia, in Kansas, in Texas, in Missouri, in Chicago, Illinois, in Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, Africa, Pakistan, Zambia, Kenya, and to the United Kingdom, and also to our brethren in Australia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 6 on the subject, the opening of the seventh seal. And I would like to begin our study on the statement, White House Recruiter, on page 39. So let us read. It says, all who have perused these pages to this point have surely become aware of the fact that even this very restricted representation of the additional message, that of the judgment of the living, gives in itself tremendous power and force to the three angels' messages. Early writings, page 277. But in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? First, by bringing to light the heretofore unrevealed aspects of the judgment, and then subsequently by freeing God's people from both sin and sinners, thereby bringing into existence the long-looked-for purified church, that looketh forth as the morning, fair as the moon, clear as the sun, and terrible as an army with banners. Song of Solomon, chapter 6, verse 10, and Prophets and Kings, page 725. A veritable powerhouse indeed. White House Recruiter on page 39. I would like to focus our attention to the statement that not until all the aspects of the judgment will be revealed that the message of the third angel will swell into a loud cry. The Shepherd's Rod declared clearly that, but in what way is it to give absolute power and force to them? And the absolute answer given is that by bringing to light the heretofore unrevealed aspects of the judgment. And since the first aspect of the judgment is bookwork transaction, therefore, not until all the proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary will be completely revealed, the third angel's message will never swell into a loud cry. I would like to read first answerer number 5, page 30. It says, this is the first aspect of the judgment. And being only a bookwork, Daniel 7, verse 10, a work that does not disturb either the dead in the graves or the living in the church. It takes place in heaven. So, the only thing that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary is bookwork transaction. As the Shepherd's Rod plainly told us in track number 3 on page 6, it says, and since the books are obviously the focal point in the scene, so the focal point in the proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary, it is pertaining to the books. So, we need to focus our whole attention to the entire proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. That such statement in White House Recruiter, page 39, can be easily understood that the complete unfoldment of the entire proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary must be revealed prior to the proclamation of the loud cry proclamation of the third angel's message. For the third angel's message will never swell into a loud cry, not until all the unrevealed aspects that pertains to the judgment will be brought to light. White House Recruiter, page 39. And since accordingly, in White House Recruiter on page 34, saying, with the completed judgment message during the 11th hour. White House Recruiter, page 34. So that statement is easy to understand that there is a divinely appointed time by which all the aspects that pertains to the judgment will be completed in the period of the 11th hour. according to White House Recruiter, page 34. So, the subject 11th hour is a very broad subject, but at this time, we will be focusing to the proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. I remember the statement on White House Recruiter on page 20. It says that heaven's books deal with all aspects of life. White House Recruiter, page 20. So, the books in the heavenly sanctuary deals all aspects of life. And is, as we stated already, that there are 66 books in the heavenly sanctuary. And maybe at the end of our subject, at the final episode, we will send to you enumerating one by one all the books in the heavenly sanctuary. But this one thing that you need to understand, that according to White House Recruiter, page 20, heaven's books deal with all aspects of life. So that is the statement. Therefore, in that 66 books, all the aspects of life had been dealt with in that 66 books. The same with the Bible. It deals with all aspects of life, containing 66 books. Now, I would like to read the statement on the Old Symbolic Code. So, here on the Old Symbolic Code, one Symbolic Code, number 13 on page 10, it says, as there is to be no judgment in progress between the close of provision and the second coming of Christ or the commencement of the millennium. So that is very plain. So I would like to show to you that statement in Symbolic Code. So this is the general close of provision. And this is the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. So within this period of time, the statement, it says, there is no judgment in progress. So no judgment. Of course, that statement, no judgment, is pertaining to the heavenly sanctuary. Because within this period of time, there are many judgments on earth. For example, the 7 last plagues. So the statement, as there is to be no judgment in progress between the close of provision to the second coming of Christ, pointing to the judicial proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. So that period of time, there is no judicial proceedings that takes place in the heavenly sanctuary. So now, I would like to read track number 6 on page 56. So I would like to read a statement. It says, Daniel 7 verse 22, hoping that you are already familiar with Daniel 7 verse 22. What is Daniel 7 verse 22? The second mention of Daniel of the first judicial session. I would like to read. Track number 15 on page 15. It says, track number 15, page 15. The student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. So do not forget that Daniel, the only proceedings that have been shown by God to Daniel is only one judicial session. It says, the student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. Although, in chapter 7, he does make mention of the judgment twice. First in verse 10 and second in verse 22. So, always remember that, brothers and sisters. Do not forget that. Concerning the judicial session, we already proven yesterday that when we'll be talking about judicial session, it takes place in the most holy place, right? As stated in 2SR 199. So, to familiarize, let us read 2SR page 199. Saying, the arrangement and the scene as described by John proves that it is the judgment in session, for it is held in the Holy of Holies. So, the term the judgment in session, that is held in the Holy of Holies or most holy place. So, if the proceedings is held in the most holy place, that is the judgment in session. So, let us read again. Track number 6 on page 56. Daniel 7 verse 22 shows that the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and that after the judgment, they possess the kingdom. So, let us analyze closely Daniel 7 verse 22. And reading the Bible itself, let us read. Daniel 7 on verse 22. Let us read the Bible. Daniel chapter 7 on verse 22. It says, "Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom." Daniel 7 verse 22. So, we know that the Ancient of Days, that is God the Father. So, until the Ancient of Days came. The word until meaning up to. So, to understand the word until, we need to go back to verse 21. So, let us go back to Daniel 7 on verse 21 and then proceed to verse 22. It says, "I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them." Brothers and sisters, I need to remind again that when we will be studying the book of Daniel and the book of Revelation, let us distinctly separate the groundwork and the particular object in view, as is stated in track number 5, page 32, and also in track number 5, page 34, or page 33 and page 34. So, while we will be studying the groundwork, we need to focus our attention more fully on the particular object in view. Now, verse 21 on Daniel chapter 7, if we will apply it during the dark ages, the description in verse 21 do not exactly fit to the happenstance that occurred during the dark ages. Because the statement in verse 22 says, "Until the Ancient of Days came." When does the Ancient of Days came? In the groundwork. And where the Ancient of Days came? That is in the most holy place. The Ancient of Days came into the most holy place in October 22, 1844. So, I would like to read again, verse 21 and verse 22. "I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints." Now, if you will say, the same horn made war with the saints, it is a comparison that this horn made war with the saints, and then, at the second time, the same horn that made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Now, who are they, the saints mentioned here? And what does it mean by the statement, prevailed against them? Is it forever? No, because the statement in verse 22, "Until the Ancient of Days came," meaning in October 22, 1844, when the Ancient of Days came to the most holy place, that horn, brothers and sisters, whatever the work of that horn, it is only up to that point. If you will look at, brothers and sisters, now I would like to read verse 2 as well. Sometimes you will say, why is it that it is Daniel 7 verse 22? Would you think it is a mere happenstance that verse 22 is pointing to October 22? Why is it that it is on chapter 7 in the book of Daniel? Because October is the 7th month. Why is it that it had been mentioned twice? The first mention is Daniel 7 verse 10, and the second mention is Daniel 7 verse 22. Because it points out to the 10th of October, October 10, the Day of Atonement. Now, I would like to read 2SR page 139. 2SR 139. The horn bears rule over all the earth. So the horn bears rule over all the earth. Now, you can read the entire paragraph, but I would like to read the middle part saying, "The truth expressed by the daily and the sanctuary were trodden down by reason of transgression in the period of the broken state of Rome up to 508 AD. For the imperial government came to an end in the year 476. Furthermore, the papal power treats God's truth on the ground up to the termination of the prophetic 1,260 years and ended with the imprisonment of the Pope in 1798. But the sanctuary and the daily were held to the ground by the great horn up to 1844. The three angels," it says, "at that time he lost control of them, and the power of the three angels' messages raised the truth from the ground or from underfoot and placed it in the church." 2SR page 100. 139. Although we will explain this in our final episodes on the subject, the exceeding great horn. I only mentioned this verse 21, so that we could understand the word until on verse 22, brothers and sisters. So, to have a clear conception, I would like just to summarize that the mere fact that Jesus Christ says, Matthew 24 verse 15, the abomination is set up in the holy place, is indicating clearly that God allowed the exceeding great horn to darken the understanding of God's people, the saints, during His ministerial work in the holy place. But at the time when Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place, at that time, the exceeding great horn lost control of them. He could no longer prevent the truth expressed by the daily and the sanctuary. The true people of God will be completely lightened. They will be enlightened concerning this truth, brothers and sisters. And it is even more directly applied in the judgment that pertains to the living. Because the statement in 2SR 139, the power of the third angel's message, it is the one that raised the truth from the ground, from being underfoot. And the third angel's message is directly applied in the judgment that pertains to the living. John Conference Special, page 39. But let us focus our attention to the statement, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, from groundwork to the particular object in view. Now, from groundwork, brothers and sisters, that is in October 22, 1844, the proceedings in the most holy place, we know that it is Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, making a mediation to the saints so that their sins will be blotted out. But in the second heaven, let's put here second heaven, that is the fulfillment that the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And it must be pointing to, brothers and sisters, pointing to the saints that were already in the heavenly sanctuary. So all of them, the judgment was given to them. Where? In the holy place. So the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. But that is not the particular object in view. Because the particular object in view is pointing to the 144,000, the living saints. Now, I would like to read again the statement here in track number 6 on page 56. It says, Daniel 7 verse 22 shows that the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and that after the judgment, they possess the kingdom. So don't forget that statement. After the judgment, they possess the kingdom. Now, concerning the premillennial kingdom, I think I will no longer elaborate. I think it is an admitted absolute fact that the very first one to inherit that premillennial kingdom is the 144,000 living saints, the first fruits. They are the very first one to possess that kingdom. The kingdom mentioned in Daniel 7 verse 22 is not the kingdom in heaven. It is the kingdom on earth. Now, then it says, whereas the executive judgment of all the wicked, of those who did not rise in the first resurrection, Revelation 20 verse 5 and 6, takes place afterwards, while the wicked are in their graves. For says John, and I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books according to their works. Revelation 20 verse 12. Now, to make it clearer, let us read 4 Symbolic Code 429, page 11. 4 Symbolic Code 429, page 11. It says, is the second coming of Christ the executive judgment? Answer, the coming of Christ is not the executive judgment. So, brothers and sisters, the statement, the second visible coming of Jesus Christ is not the executive judgment, pointing to the bookwork. Because we know that the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, it is an executive judgment. but pointing to the bookwork. It says, the coming of Christ is not the executive judgment, for the wicked are to be judged after his second coming. Hence, the executive judgment of the wicked must be accomplished during the millennium, when the saints sit in judgment. Then it says, Daniel 7, verse 22. Now, do not forget that when we'll be talking about the book of Daniel, that is bookwork. Bookwork, transaction. Now, let us read 1 TG. 1 TG number 11. It says, page 6. 1 TG number 11, page 6. This judicial work commences first among the dead. Bookwork only, of course. Then it says, Daniel 7, verse 10. 1 TG number 11, page 6. Now, I would like to focus to the statement that when we'll be talking about the judgment on Daniel chapter 7, bookwork only, of course, according to the shepherd's rod. Now, since we already read in 4 symbolic code, 4 to 9, page 11, that the executive judgment of all the wicked, but bookwork. So, let us distinctly separate the executive judgment, which is bookwork. There must also be investigative judgment, which is bookwork. So, I think that is also the fulfillment of that statement given by Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. On verse 2, it says, do ye not know that the saints shall judge the world? And if the world shall be judged by you, are you unworthy to judge the smallest matters? So, Apostle Paul is plainly declaring, brothers and sisters, that the saints, they will judge the world. But, brothers and sisters, it is directly applied to the living saints. It is directly applied to the living saints. When it pertains to all the wicked, the judgment that was given by God to the saints of the Most High in October 22, 1844 is only pertaining to the Lamb's Book of Life, not sealed with 7 seals, whose names to be retained and whose names to be blotted out. But in order for the saints, brothers and sisters, not to commit any mistake, as well as the angels, because the saints is also, or the angels are also called saints, the loyal angels. All the names to be blotted out was already blotted by Jesus Christ from 1833 to 1843. So when Jesus Christ entered to the most holy place in October 22, 1844, their work is only to blot out those names that had already been blotted. But to repeat again, let us focus our attention to the particular object in view, the 144,000 living saints. The shepherd's rod declared clearly in 2 SR 171, saying, the sealing of the 144,000 is at the closing of the judgment of the dead and at the beginning of the judgment of the living. Therefore, they have a great duty to perform upon the earth in connection with the judgment. So, do not forget that statement. The 144,000 living saints, they are called servants of the Lord, servants of God. And since they are servants, they have a duty to perform. And that duty is a great duty. But what great duty that they will perform? It is in connection with the judgment. The fulfillment of Daniel 7 verse 22. The judgment will be given to the saints of the Most High. Now, I would like to read track number 9. Before reading track number 9, I would like to read first 1 symbolic code number 6, page 9. 1 symbolic code number 6, page 9. It says, where Elder James White is speaking of the judgment of the wicked during the millennium and is using for his proof, that is the opponent, Daniel 7 verse 22, which scripture applies to that event. The article misconstrues both Elder White's statement and the scripture in trying to make us believe that Elder White is teaching that the investigative judgment is to begin after the second coming of Christ. So, brothers and sisters, this reading in 1 symbolic code number 6, page 9, it was already answered in 4 symbolic code 4 to 9, page 11. What judgment that will take place, brothers and sisters, during 1,000 years, the millennium, executive judgment of all the wicked. And that is also the fulfillment of Jude verse 15, right? Jude verse 15. For example, let us read 2SR. 2SR page 162. Do not forget, brothers and sisters, that our principal object is to have a complete understanding the entire proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary from start to finish, from October 22, 1844 up to eternity. Now, let us read 2SR page 162. The fire coming down out of heaven upon the beast denotes the second death of the wicked. So the beast mentioned here is the scarlet-colored beast. It is pointing to the scarlet-colored beast at the second time when the scarlet-colored beast will appear after the 1,000 years. It says, the fire coming down out of heaven upon the beast denotes the second death of the wicked, 100 years after the second resurrection. Then the prophecy of Enoch shall meet its complete fulfillment. Behold, the Lord cometh to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Jude verse 14 and 15. While the 14th verse of Jude applies to Christ coming to the most holy apartment in the heavenly sanctuary, and the 15th verse to his second advent, the completeness of the words find their fulfillment after the millennium, for at that time only can he execute the final judgment upon all the ungodly from Cain to the end of this present world. And that is the lake of fire. We already studied that the second death is the lake of fire. Now, let us distinctly separate the executive judgment, which is bookwork, and the executive judgment, which is, brothers and sisters, the material side. And according to our reading in 2SR 162, that executive judgment is the second death. That is the second death, the lake of fire. Now, since we already read in 1 Symbolic Code number 6, page 9, that concerning Daniel chapter 7, verse 22, the second mention, brothers and sisters, started from October 22, 1844, down to the 1,000 years. So, Daniel 7, verse 22, there are three different proceedings, and there are three entities saying the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. First, it is applied to the 4 beasts, 24 elders, and then the witnesses. The proceedings in the holy place was given to them. But the second, by which that is the particular object in view, is pointing to the 144,000, but pointing to the investigative judgment of all the wicked. Brothers and sisters, let us distinctly separate the investigative judgment, which is bookwork, and executive judgment, which is also bookwork. Now let us read tract number 9 on page 34. Let us read Judgment During the Millennium. At tract number 9, page 33, page 34. If an earthly judge does not convict and condemn a criminal without benefit of trial by jury, certainly then the all-just God of heaven will not. So the shepherd is emphasizing that if an earthly judge, brothers and sisters, does not convict and condemn a criminal without benefit of trial by jury, how much more to the all-just God? He will not and cannot do such thing. He will not pass final sentence upon the wicked. That the final sentence mentioned is pointing to the actual execution. But we are talking about the second death, that all the wicked, whether angels or human being, all of them will suffer the second death. What is the second death? The lake of fire. Now let us read tract number 9, page 34. If an earthly judge does not convict and condemn a criminal without benefit of trial by jury, certainly then the all-just God of heaven will not. He will not pass final sentence upon the wicked, convicting them of sin and condemning them to die the second death. Revelation 20 verse 14, until after he has given the saints the jury. Who are they, the saints? The jury. Until after he has given the saints opportunity to witness for themselves the judgment of the wicked, the husbands, wives, children, relatives, friends, and acquaintances, then missing from the mansions above, and to examine the records which show why they are not there, but instead are mouldering in their graves below. But that is pointing to the executive judgment during 1,000 years. If the executive judgment will take place during 1,000 years, then there must be investigative judgment of all the wicked, not only human being, but as well as all the wicked angels. Because as we stated the absolute fact in 1 Symbolic Code number 6, page 9, Daniel 7 verse 22 is applied into two judicial proceedings, investigative and executive. But do not forget, Daniel 7, the judgment concerning Daniel 7 is only book work. Only book work. For example, concerning executive judgment, where we could find the executive judgment, Jude, verse 15, not in the book of Daniel. Revelation chapter 20. So, the shepherd's rod made it so plain, very plain, saying, of course, book work only. 1 TG 11, page 6. Concerning the judgment that had been given by God to Daniel, it is only book work transaction. But logically, the only portion of the judgment by which the saints could participate, as the statement in Daniel 7 verse 22 indicates, saying the judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, is only pertaining to book work. They will never execute judgment to the wicked. But concerning executive judgment, which is book work, all the saints, resurrected and living saints, during 1,000 years, all of them, they will participate the executive judgment of all the wicked brothers and sisters, by which such executive judgment is book work. So the statement in tract number 9, page 34, is very plain, that before God will execute, not book work, the actual punishment, which is the second death. What is the second death? Lake of fire. There must be investigative as well as executive judgment, which is book work. Now, brothers and sisters, let us focus our attention to the lake of fire. Now, I would like to read again 2SR 152. 2SR page 152. It says, the lake of fire into which the beast and the false prophet are cast cannot be at the coming of Christ in the clouds, for the wicked are not destroyed by fire at that time, but with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 8. The beast and the false prophet are cast into a lake of fire after the sixth plague and before the end of the world. When does the beast and the false prophet will be cast alive into the lake of fire? After the sixth plague. So, it must be also during the seventh plague. Now, let us continue reading. It says, thus the world would be given an ensample. The word ensample meaning type, photograph. Thus the world will be given an example before the millennium of the destruction after the 1,000 years had ended. The example of the beast and the false prophet is to show that all the wicked will be thrown alive into a lake of fire, and that is the second death. All the wicked, whether angels or human being, all of them will be thrown alive into the lake of fire, which is the second death. Then it says, speaking of the everlasting ruin of the devil, the word says, and the devil that deceived them was cast into a lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are. Revelation 20 verse 10. That is, the beast and the false prophet do not come up in the second resurrection, exemplifying that there is no resurrection from the second death. Then it says, again, we see there is a type for every event, and let none despise types, for where there is no type, there is no truth. Now, brothers and sisters, the statement is very plain. All the wicked will be cast alive into the lake of fire. Angels and human beings, all the wicked will be cast alive into the lake of fire, which is the second death. Now, here's another statement in 2TG. 2TG number, let's read. 2TG number 42, page 27 and 28. So, let's read the statement given by the shepherd's rod. 2TG 42, page 28. Let's read the statement. It says, it is concerning Revelation 19, verse 19 to 21. It says, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant are here mentioned in Revelation 19, verse 19, 20, and 21. So the shepherd's rod says that Revelation 19, verse 19, verse 20, and 21, there are three entities mentioned here. It is the false prophet, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant. Then it says, who are they? First the beast and the false prophet, and then the remnant, those that are left, are cast into the lake of fire. So, there are three to be cast into the lake of fire. When? After the sixth plague. According to reading, right? To SR 152. After the sixth plague. That is the type. How many days the lake of fire? 164 days as revealed in the flood study. So we have the type. The lake of fire prior to the millennium and the lake of fire after the millennium. So I would like to show to you, brothers and sisters, how perfect is the Word of God. And then we'll focus to the scarlet colored beast. So let us distinctly separate the scarlet colored beast, the beast, and the false prophet. So look at, brothers and sisters. Now, this is 1,000 years. For example, this is 1,000 years. Or it is called millennium. Millennium. So 1,000 years. Then after 1,000 years, there would be 100 years. By which during this time, all the wicked human beings were resurrected. But the beast, the false prophet, and those who are sympathetic or the sympathizers of the beast and the false prophet were no longer resurrected in the second resurrection because they were already thrown in the lake of fire. Let us read. Let us put here. So, lake of fire. Lake of fire. When? After the sixth plague. After the sixth plague. Who are they to be thrown into the lake of fire? Beast, false prophet, and the remnant. So let us read again the statement. In 2TG number 42, it says, first the beast and the false prophet, and then the remnant, those that are left are cast into the lake of fire. Since the beast and the prophet are special world entities, the remnant, those that are left, represent the rest of the unrepented world sympathetic to the beast and the prophets. The destruction of the prophet, the beast, and the remnant, therefore, is the end of the world, the terminus of the time of the end. Now, let us connect this reading into SR 152. It says, the lake of fire into which the beast and the false prophet are cast cannot be at the coming of Christ in the clouds. For the wicked are not destroyed by fire at that time, but with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 8. The beast and the false prophet are cast into a lake of fire after the sixth plague and before the end of the world. Now, it's easy to understand, brothers and sisters. Who are they to be? The lake of fire is 164 days. 164 days, I would like to put here. This is the entire days by which the beast and the false prophet will be on the lake of fire. And they will die at the end of the 164 days or at the 164th day. That is the time by which the beast and the false prophet, brothers and sisters, will die. And the beast and the false prophet is being only two entities, is pointing to, I would like to, in the antitype, the beast in the antitype. Let us put here because here the antitype. So, the antitype of the beast is the devil. The antitype of the false prophet is all the fallen angels. And the antitype of the remnant is pointing to all wicked human being. So, like, all wicked human being. So, that is the antitype as stated by the shepherd's rod. But this is the type. So, let us focus first to the type. Who are they, the remnant? They are those sympathetic to the beast and the false prophet. Who are they, the remnant here? Those sympathetic to the devil and the fallen angels. Now, the remnant, brothers and sisters, here after 100 years, there must also 164 days, brothers and sisters, 164 days lake of fire. Lake of fire. So there are 164 days. What is the difference between the lake of fire after the sixth plague and the lake of fire after the 100 years, brothers and sisters? Now, let us enumerate one by one the similarity and the difference. The remnant mentioned here is the scarlet-colored beast. Scarlet-colored beast. So that is the scarlet-colored beast. It is the scarlet-colored beast. Now, I would like to connect first to the scarlet-colored beast so that we could understand, brothers and sisters, in this study. So, before connecting the scarlet-colored beast, the very first one to be cast alive into the lake of fire is the beast and the false prophet. But the remnant will be cast alive into the lake of fire, those sympathetic to the beast and the false prophet, at the commencement of the end of the world. So the end of the world, let us put here, end of the world. The end of the world, brothers and sisters, commence before the 164 days lake of fire will end. So the remnant will be in the lake of fire, not the entire 164 days. Only the beast and the false prophet will be on the lake of fire the whole 164 days. Because they will be in the lake of fire before the end of the world, according to 2SR 152. But the remnant, they will be cast into the lake of fire at the commencement of the end of the world. So, in comparison with the lake of fire during or after the 100 years, all of them, the beast, the devil, all the fallen angels, and all wicked human beings, all of them will be cast alive into the lake of fire at the commencement of the 164 days. But all human beings, they will die prior to the time when the 164 days will end. So, when all human beings were already dead, the devil and the fallen angels are still suffering in the lake of fire. But here, the beast and the false prophet will suffer the lake of fire the entire 164 days, brothers and sisters, but the remnant will not suffer the lake of fire the entire 64 days because they will be thrown into the lake of fire, brothers and sisters, at the commencement of the end of the world. And we will study closely when would be the commencement of the end of the world. But for sure, the commencement of the end of the world, so the end of the world, not the end of the world in Matthew 13, the end of the world in Revelation 19. Because there are many subjects concerning end of the world. And let us deal the subject according to the chapter and according to the verse. Now let us focus our attention first to the scarlet-colored beast. So let us read, brothers and sisters, the statement in 2SR. Let us read 2SR on page, I think, first on page 100. I would like to read first the Bible on Revelation 17. Revelation chapter 17 on verse 8. Revelation chapter 17, verse 8. So, that's the statement. It says, "And the beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wander, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is." Revelation 17, on verse 8. So, let us read the commentary given by the shepherd's rod concerning Revelation chapter 17, verse 8. Now, reading first 2SR 114. 2SR 114. "The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and they that dwell on the earth shall wander, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, yet is, and yet is." It says, "The beast that thou sawest, the scarlet-colored, say the angel, was, and is not, As previously explained, the beast first began to appear on the stage of history in 1929. Therefore, the word was represents the period from the above stated date up to the time when he will be not. So the period represented by the word not is the 1,000 years of Satan's captivity millennium. Now in page 116 it says, it is summarized as follows: the beast that was is the period prior to the millennium, and is not is during the time of the millennium, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit is the period after the millennium, at which time all the wicked will be resurrected and go into perdition, that is at the end of the 100 years. The wicked, Satan and his angels, shall be consumed by fire, or the lake of fire. Now look at, brothers and sisters, how God revealed the wondrous structure of the plan of redemption through types. The statement, brothers and sisters, in 2SR, I would like to read 2SR page 267. 2SR page 267, it says, a great searchlight by the power of the Spirit shining through the types is the only medium that can remove the obstruction and clear the way to an understanding of this and many other mysteries that are considered incomprehensible and that baffle the human mind. So, the shepherd's rod called the types as the great searchlight employed by God to clear all the mysteries, all prophetic mysteries. Let us read 1SR, page 49. It says, beginning from page 48, type of the second death. It says, type of the second death. It says, it has been a perplexing question whether the wicked ones who arise in the special resurrection of Daniel 12:2 continue to live or die with the living wicked at the second coming of Christ and be resurrected at the end of the 1,000 years. So, remember, the statement says, type of the second death. So, what is the second death? Lake of fire. So, we need to have the type of the second death, which is the lake of fire, and the antitype of the second death, which is the lake of fire. Now, let us read. It says, it has been a perplexing question whether the wicked ones who arise in the special resurrection of Daniel 12 verse 2, actually, brothers and sisters, if you will dig deeper, Daniel 12:2 is pointing to all the righteous. The special resurrection that pertaining to the wicked is Revelation 1 verse 7. But the statement in the special resurrection of Daniel 12:2, meaning during that time. Let us distinctly separate the resurrection that pertains to all the righteous and the resurrection that pertains to all the wicked. Now let us read. It has been a perplexing question whether the wicked ones who arise in the special resurrection of Daniel 12:2 continue to live or die with the living wicked at the second coming of Christ and be resurrected at the end of the 1,000 years. Who are they to be destroyed at the second coming of Christ? The living wicked. It says, with the living wicked, meaning those that have been resurrected, the term living wicked cannot be applied to them because they were already resurrected. So the term living wicked, those wicked that did not as yet die, and they will die at the second visible coming of Jesus Christ. Now, I would like to go back again to the reading. It says, as God leaves nothing undone, you see, look at the statement given by the shepherd's rod. As God leaves nothing undone, He has foretold everything in prophecy. You see, God foretold everything in prophecy and types as well. That's why it says in the Old Symbolic Code, this statement can also be applied saying, for Symbolic Code 10 to 12 page 2, for Symbolic Code 10 to 12 page 2, all of which shows, it says, all of which shows that there has occurred nothing in church history of which the voice of prophecy has failed to speak. So let us go back again to the reading in 1SR page 48. As God lives nothing undone, He has foretold everything in prophecy and types as well. What had been foretold by God? Everything. And that's the reason the shepherd's rod says that. Desires to know, what is that statement? In 2 Symbolic Code 5 and 6 page 8, 2 Symbolic Code 5 and 6 page 8, study with desire to know everything. 2 Symbolic Code 5 and 6 page 8, study
with desire to know everything. Because God leaves nothing undone. God has fulfilled everything in prophecy and types as well. If we have a type for every other event, we must have a type of this. Type of what? Second death. What is the second death? Lake of fire. So let us now study the lake of fire, which is the type that is prior to the millennium, and the lake of fire, which is the antitype after the millennium. Brothers and sisters, there is God's law. The statement, God's law, at track number 9, I would like to read that reading. Track number 9, page 72. It says, God's law of type, that where there is type, there must also be antitype. So, the term law, brothers and sisters, there must be an absolute rule. And the absolute rule is that type and antitype should exactly fit not only to the event, but as well as to the time. Great controversy, 399. Answerer number 3, page 23. 1SR Packet Edition, page 73. As well as the writings of 1888 message. Now, since the scarlet color beast, the type is prior to the millennium and the antitype is after the millennium, the shepherds had made it so plain. Revelation 17, verse 8. So, 1929, it says, 1929, so that is the beast that was. And then we have 1,000 years. So, this is the time by which is not. And then, after the 100, during the 100 years, after the 1,000 years, so this is the time by which yet is. So, the statement can be easily understood. But the beast, brothers and sisters, the beast prior to the millennium is the scarlet colored beast. The beast during the millennium is not the scarlet colored beast. It is the red dragon. At that time, the only ones that will be on this earth is the red dragon together with the fallen angels. And the beast after the 1,000 years, during the 100 years, that is the scarlet colored beast. So if the antitype, the scarlet colored beast, there are 100 years that have been given to the antitype. Therefore, the type must also be 100 years. 1929 plus 100, then you will fall in 2029. This is Gregorian calendar. February 11, 1929. February 11, 2029. Now, let us see first in Bible calendar. February 11, 2029. Let us convert to the Bible calendar so that we could understand. So you see, in Bible calendar, that was already October 8, 2030. But in Gregorian, that is 2029. Now, remember, brothers and sisters, the visible coming of Jesus Christ is in the year of Jubilee, 2031. Although we did not know the definite time, because Jubilee, the year of Jubilee consists of 360 days, and we do not know. The only thing that God had bestowed unto us is the year, which is in absolute importance to understand all the prophecies. It was already recorded in the Bible and for prophecy that concerning the second visible coming of Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, the specific date, it will not be made known. Only God the Father will declare it. And such declaration of God the Father, that is after the seven plagues. But there are plenty of proofs in abundance that God's people will know the year, and that is the year of Jubilee. Now let us, for example, put here, this is the entire year from April 1, 2031 up to March 30, 2031. So this is the entire period that we call Year of Jubilee. Consists of 360 days. So let us put it on Gregorian calendar. Let us look at Bible. So April 1, 2031. So in Gregorian, that is August 3, 2029. Now, March 30, 2031. March 30. You see, in Gregorian, that is July 28, 2030. That is in Gregorian calendar. You see, brothers and sisters, 2030. Brothers and sisters, July 28, 2030. In Gregorian calendar, in Bible, that is already March 30, 2031. So all the events must be fulfilled backward from that time. So let us now compare the type and the antitype. The type, antitype. Pointing to the scarlet-colored beast. Scarlet-colored beast. Here is scarlet-colored beast. The type that was in Revelation 17:8. 100 years before millennium, from 1929 to 2029. So that is the type. 100 years before the millennium. How about the antitype? Yet is. That is 100 years after the millennium. You see, brothers and sisters? So that is the type and antitype, pointing only to the scarlet-colored beast. The type, the scarlet-colored beast, exists 100 years before the millennium. The antitype, the scarlet-colored beast, exists 100 years after the millennium. Now, let us go to the lake of fire. Type and antitype, which is the second death. So, let us make a comparison, brothers and sisters. So, lake of fire or second death. Lake of fire. So, lake of fire. So, this is the antitype. This is the type, second death. Second death. Second death. How many days the lake of fire? 164 days. In the antitype, 164 days. Who will be in the lake of fire the entire 164 days? Entire 164 days. Who are they? The beast and false prophet. False prophet. Who are they to be in the lake of fire in the antitype the entire 164 days? The devil and all the wicked angels. What is the difference? The difference in the type, the beast and the false prophet, they are the first one that have been cast alive into the lake of fire. So they are the first one. So the beast and the false prophet had been cast alive into the lake of fire, beast and false prophet. But brothers and sisters, the remnant, those sympathetic to the beast and the false prophet, while the beast and the false prophet were already in the lake of fire, suffering for the lake of fire, before the 164 days will end, brothers and sisters, those sympathetic to the beast, they will cast alive into the lake of fire. So, the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant, all of them died the same period of time. But the beast and the false prophet cast alive into the lake of fire prior to the remnant. So, the remnant, those who are sympathetic to the beast and the false prophet, they did not suffer the lake of fire entire 164 days. How about in the antitype? All of them cast alive into the lake of fire at the very beginning, at the commencement. But all you wicked human being, they will die prior to the 164 days. And when all human wicked human being were dead, the devil and the wicked angels are still alive, suffering the lake of fire. So what is the difference? The difference that the beast and the false prophet was cast alive into the lake of fire prior to the remnant. But beast and false prophet and the remnant died at the same time. But in the antitype, all wicked human being and the devil and the angels cast alive into the lake of fire, all of them at the commencement of the 164 days. But all wicked human being died prior to the end of 164 days. So the wicked human being died before the devil and the wicked angels. All the wicked angels died. So that is the difference, brothers and sisters. And what is the next difference, brothers and sisters? The false prophet, the beast and the false prophet and the remnant, brothers and sisters, they died prior to the millennium. Whereas in the antitype, all of them died after the millennium. So hoping, brethren, we have been able to understand how God revealed all the future events through the typological representation. Now let us go back to our subject. Since we already proven with absolute fact that the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant, they will no longer be resurrected after the 1,000 years, because there is no resurrection of the second death. What is the second death? Lake of fire. Now, if the beast, the false prophet, and the remnant will be cast alive into the lake of fire, which is the second death, and the divine principle, they will not be cast alive into the lake of fire without passing first investigative judgment and executive judgment. Therefore, brothers and sisters, Daniel 7 verse 22 is directly applied in the judgment that pertains to the living, by which the 144,000 living saints, they have a great duty to perform in connection with the judgment. Now, going back again to that statement in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 2, brothers and sisters, by which Apostle Paul made it so plain that the saints will judge the world. Brothers and sisters, if it is pointing to the executive judgment during 1,000 years, the saints mentioned must be all the resurrected saints and all the living saints. All of them, they will participate in the executive judgment of all the wicked. Those who will be cast alive into the lake of fire after the 100 years. So, our goal now is to find out when does the investigative judgment of all the wicked together with the angels, the devil, and all the angels, and brothers and sisters, all wicked human beings, the unsaved ones, before the executive judgment bookwork that will take place during the 1,000 years, there must also be investigative judgment, which is bookwork. For investigative judgment precedes the executive judgment. But we are studying bookwork, brothers and sisters, pertaining only to the bookwork transaction. Now, I would like to read 12 symbolic code number 6 and 7 on page 4. It says, we must bear in mind, however, that the judgment precedes the resurrection. What judgment? Both investigative judgment and executive judgment precedes the resurrection. But what judgment? Bookwork. Because if you will say that executive judgment, which is the actual execution, how could it be that it will precede the resurrection? They will be executed lake of fire, and then after execution lake of fire, they will be again resurrected? No, there is no resurrection of the second death according to the shepherd's rod. So, the judgment mentioned here is only bookwork. All the bookwork transaction must be finished prior to the resurrection. So, that is very plain. Now, let us read again. 12 symbolic code number 6 and 7, page 4. We must bear in mind, however, that the judgment precedes the resurrection. Then prior to the resurrection, their cases are taken up in the judgment, and the decision is made which determines that they are worthy to be called forth in the resurrection of the just. So before the resurrection in Daniel chapter 12, brothers and sisters, since Daniel 12, it is called mixed resurrection. During that time, there is saints to be resurrected, but at the same time, also the wicked. So brothers and sisters, before the resurrection, both to the righteous and the wicked, there must be first investigative judgment and executive judgment, which is called bookwork. The same with the illustration in the antitype. Before they will be resurrected, there must be executive judgment, which is bookwork, that is during 1,000 years, which is closely connected to Revelation chapter 20. Now let us finish first reading this statement. He says, we must bear in mind, however, that the judgment precedes the resurrection. Then prior to the resurrection, their cases are taken up in the judgment, and the decision is made which determines that they are worthy to be called forth in the resurrection of the just. After the resurrection, they will meet the Lord and will receive welcome into His kingdom. 12 symbolic code number 6 and 7, page 4. So let us go back again to our reading in 2TG number 12, page 29. The one we read yesterday. So let us read again. In 2TG number 12, on page 29. So let us read. It says, the only difference you see is that Daniel was shown the judgment being set up, whereas John saw it in full session. The revelation, moreover, in the following verses, again and again, endeavors to make us see that the event there portrayed is the judgment in session. Fear God and give glory to Him, for the hour of His judgment is come. Revelation 14:7. And I saw thrones. John declares,
and judgment was given unto them. Revelation 20 verse 4. You see, brothers and sisters, that is pointing to Revelation 20 verse 4. And what is the comparison? Let us go first to page 28. Oh, is it page 27? 2TG number 12. On page 28, 27 and 28, it says, in juxtaposition, the prophecy by Daniel with the revelation by John stand as follows. I would like to read the upper portion, brothers and sisters. Let us analyze closely the statement. The prophet Daniel too, whose book is a complement to the revelation, was given a glimpse of the judgment. He saw the Ancient of Days sitting on the throne, also the thrones upon which evidently sit the 24 elders. He also saw the myriads of angels, and the one like unto the Son of Man, the Lamb, brought near before the Ancient of Days. In juxtaposition, the prophecy by Daniel with the revelation by John stand as follows. Daniel's vision, number 1, verse 9, I beheld till the thrones were cast down. John's vision, number 1, Revelation 20 verse 4, and I saw thrones. So you see, brothers and sisters, the shepherd's rod compare, brothers and sisters, Revelation 20 verse 4 to Revelation 7 verse 9. What does it mean by the word juxtaposition? Let us define the word juxtaposition. That the shepherd's rod is trying to compare the vision of Daniel and the vision of John. The vision of Daniel, Daniel 7 verse 9. In the vision of John, that is Revelation 20 verse 4. Juxtaposition, it says, it is a noun, the fact of two things being seen or placed close together. It says, what's that? With contrasting effect. So, or comparison. So that is the state juxtaposition. Now, Revelation 20 verse 4, when it compared to the book of Daniel, that is Daniel 7 verse 9. Now, let us go to Daniel 7 verse 9. Then read Revelation 20 verse 4. Daniel 7 verse 9. It says, I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. In verse 9, it says, the throne of God is like fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. That is verse 9. So what does it mean? I beheld till the thrones. Let's go back to verse 8. It says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were three of the first horns were first one plucked up by the roots, and behold, in this horn, and behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of men, and a mouth speaking great things, but that great things is against the Most High. In verse 25, it says, Daniel 7 verse 25, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. And verse 26, it says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. So, verse 8 and verse 9 is coupled together. Verse 25 and verse 26 is coupled together. What is verse 25 and verse 26? Let us go back first to track number 15. Track number 15. So I would like to read. Track number 15. Page 15, then page 16. Let's read. So, it says here, the student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. So, when we study deep prophecy, we need always to establish divine principle. Because if we will not establish divine principles, we will have a hard time to understand all the prophecies. So, always notice that when we are talking about judicial session, that is in the most holy place. But if it is judicial sitting, that is in the holy place. So, let us read again. Track 15, page 15. The student of advancing truth will also note that Daniel refers to but one judicial session. Although he does make mention of the judgment twice, first in verse 10 of chapter 7 and second in verse 22. This will be seen in the following 8 paragraphs. How many paragraphs? 8, brothers and sisters. So, let us now try to establish the first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, and 8. So, let us now count one by one all the paragraphs. So I would like to count in verse 15. So we have the first paragraph, then second, then third, then fourth, then fifth, then sixth, then seventh. So where is the eighth paragraph? There are only 7 paragraphs mentioned here. So I would like to, so the eighth paragraph is missing in this enumeration. But it cannot be mistaken because it says this will be seen in the following 8 paragraphs. I think the eighth paragraph, the number 8, the last paragraph is very important because it was hidden by God and there is an important truth. I would like to read the first paragraph. This is the first paragraph. In the first 14 verses, Daniel describes all he saw while in vision. So from Daniel 7 verse 1 to 14, that is the description of Daniel, what he saw in vision. And in verse 15, he explains how grieved and troubled he became after considering the damaging work which the fourth beast did. So verse 15, he expresses his feeling that, brothers and sisters, according to the reading, that how grieved and troubled he was when he considered the damaging work of the exceeding great horn. Then he says, then in verse 16, he tells that he approached the angel who stood by and requested his interpretation of the things seen. In compliance with this request, the angel answered. So this is the first paragraph. Now I would like to read the second paragraph. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Daniel 7 verse 17 and 18. So verse 17 and verse 18 is the answer in compliance with the request of Daniel. This is the answer given by Angel Gabriel. Now let us go to the third paragraph. This exceedingly brief interpretation did not satisfy Daniel, and being particularly interested to know in detail the things described in verses 7 to 14, the truth concerning the judgment, as well as concerning the fourth beast and its little horn that had the eyes of men and mouth speaking great things, Daniel requested further elucidation again of necessity, mentioning the judgment. Accordingly, the angel readily explained, confining his interpretation strictly to the fourth beast symbolization unto the judgment. Now, brothers and sisters, according to the shepherd's rod, Daniel was not satisfied with the very brief explanation given by Angel Gabriel found in verse 17 and 18. So, the two verses 17 and 18 is the first explanation of Angel Gabriel, but Daniel was not satisfied because the explanation is very brief. Now, I would like to go to the fourth paragraph. So we have already first, second, third, and the fourth paragraph. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. So the fourth paragraph is the first explanation of Gabriel, brothers and sisters, to the second request of Daniel. And then the fifth paragraph, and the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And let us go to the 6th paragraph. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time. And the 7th paragraph, it says, but the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and to destroy it unto the end, and the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Daniel 7 verse 23 to 27. Now let us go to Daniel chapter 7. How many verses? Daniel chapter 7. So Daniel chapter 7 has 28 verses. So here we can clearly discern that the last paragraph, the 8th paragraph, is verse 28. So it was not recorded in track 15, 16, and 17. But it was already declared that, brothers and sisters, there are 8 paragraphs. And what are those 8 paragraphs? Explaining the entire Daniel chapter 7. Now let us read the last paragraph, the 8th paragraph. It says, verse 28, brothers and sisters. So,
This is not only illustrating the 8th paragraph, but number 828 indicates the 8th paragraph, right? It is very plain, brothers and sisters. It says, "Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitation must troubled me, and my countenance changed in me. But I keep the matter in my heart." So we need to know what is the thing that had been kept by Daniel in his heart. That is the 8th paragraph, concerning the things by which it was secretly hidden by Daniel, what is in his heart. And the only one who can tell that what is in the heart of Daniel is Jesus Christ, because Daniel was already dead. So only Jesus Christ can tell us what is in the heart of Daniel by which he kept, which is the last paragraph of the 8 paragraphs. Now, let us now enumerate one by one the entire chapters of Daniel chapter 7 as explained by the shepherd's rod in track number 15. So, let us go back again. Track number 15 on page 15. In the first 14 verses, Daniel described all he saw while in vision. So, we have the first 14 verses. Daniel 7 verse 1, 2, 3, 4 up to verse 14. That is, Daniel described all he saw in vision. So, Daniel did not make any comment first. The first 14 verses, Daniel did not give his idea. He just wrote what he saw in vision from verse 1 to verse 14. Then it says, and in verse 15, he explains how grieved and troubled he became after considering the damaging work which the fourth beast did. So let us read verse 15. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. So, Daniel did not yet give any explanation of the vision, but he first expresses his feeling that he was grieved. And the shepherd had made it so plain that what is the thing that Daniel was grieved? It is concerning the damaging work. Although verse 15 did not say what is the thing by which grieved Daniel. It is concerning the damaging work. Therefore, we can easily understand what had been kept by Daniel on the last paragraph. It is concerning what Daniel understand concerning the damaging work of the exceeding great horn. Now, then it says, then in verse 16, still reading track 15:15. Then in verse 16, he tells that he approached the angel who stood by and requested his interpretation of the things seen. And in compliance with this request, the angel answered. So verse 16, Daniel first requested angel Gabriel. He says, verse 16, I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. So this is the explanation of angel Gabriel. Verse 17 and verse 18. This great beast, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. What is verse 17 and 18? Second paragraph, according to track 15, page 15. How many paragraphs? 8 paragraphs, brothers and sisters. Now, let us go to the third paragraph. This exceedingly brief interpretation did not satisfy Daniel, and being particularly interested to know in detail the things described in verses 7 to 14, the truth concerning the judgment, as well as concerning the fourth beast and its little horn that had the eyes of men and a mouth speaking great things, Daniel requested further elucidation, again of necessity, mentioning the judgment. Accordingly, the angel readily explained, confining his interpretation strictly to the fourth beast symbolization and to the judgment. So here, brothers and sisters, verse 19, verse 20, and verse 21, and verse 22. So verse 19, verse 20, verse 21, and verse 22, these 4 verses, brothers and sisters, attach 2 things. What Daniel understood concerning his vision and concerning the first explanation of angel Gabriel. He attaches what he understood. And the second thing is that he needed another explanation, more elucidation, according to the shepherd's rod. So, verse 23, verse 24, verse 25, verse 26, and verse 27, that is the second explanation of angel Gabriel. And verse 28 is the last paragraph by which Daniel, all all the things that Daniel understand after he saw the vision, after the first explanation of Gabriel, after the second explanation of Gabriel, all the things that he did understand, he kept it in his heart. Brothers and sisters, according to Daniel 7, verse 28. And we will continue that thing. What is the very thing by which Daniel kept in his heart? By which it utters the impossibility that you could be able to understand what Daniel had kept in his heart, brothers and sisters, without the Spirit of Christ, because Daniel was already dead and he died, not even telling what is the thing that he kept in his heart. Now, I would like to give you an example. Daniel 7 verse 15. The Bible says that Daniel was very grieved, but it never mentioned what is the thing that grieved Daniel, that the thing by which made Daniel grieve in spirit. It was not mentioned in the Bible, but it was mentioned by the shepherd's rod. Says that it was the damaging work of the exceeding great horn that grieved the spirit of Daniel. But for sure, that is the Spirit of Christ, brothers and sisters, that controlled the understanding of the prophet Hadad, that he could declare clearly that it is the damaging work of the exceeding great horn. Although the Bible does not mention that flatly. Of course, there must be something that grieved the spirit of Daniel, but Daniel, in his book, he did not mention it flatly. But the shepherd's rod made it so plain. It is the damaging work. So we'll continue this subject, brothers and sisters, and together also with the very important event recorded in Revelation chapter 20 on our next episode, hoping that the good Lord will bless us and will help us. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful, wonderful evening.